And we are at 4:31 and the event is set to begin. So I still see lots of people popping in, and we'll continue to watch that. But first of all, it's a great afternoon here in Big Rapids. Welcome to those who are here in Michigan and those who are in warmer states. My name is Jennifer Hagenauer. And as a member of the Hatch Planning Team, I want to welcome you to this celebration of scholarship and creative works. The hosting team today is not just me. I'm joined by Alicia Bond from Kendall. And she, along with her trustee Belle, will be facilitating our lightning talk rounds. And then Megan Biller rounds out our hosting team, and she'll be facilitating our question and wrap-up session. Just as a note, we are recording this session just like we've recorded all of the other Hatch sessions so that they can be viewed later. And to officially welcome you and kick off this celebration, it is my pleasure to introduce Provost Bobby Fleischman. So Bobby, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Hagenauer, and welcome everyone. This is a true pleasure and an honor to welcome you. And as Vice President Pilgrim shared with you, this was this was a day of board meetings, and wish we had an opportunity to attend more sessions. Starting with the keynote this morning by Denise Graves. It was a very moving keynote presentation talking about the opportunities with creating a vibrant intellectual community and the web of innovation. And not only do we have the great fortune of having a web of innovation and an opportunity to showcase that innovation. One of the things that really impressed me with the work today was the work that's been presented externally and looking at the list of authors and celebrating the authors from Stacey Armstrong and an assistant professor in social sciences who is a co-author with Sarah Damoff and Eric Dubau, and co-author on adolescent coping, in-person, and cyber victimization. And my friend becoming an even better friend as we get to know one another, Dr. Michael Berghoff. Michael's work, Michael, a professor of social work, vice president of the Academic Senate, as well as the chair of our social work program or our social work department. His work together with Cruz Maria Morales and Kaylee Moreno Burke on contextualizing Latinx genocide studies using the Shoah Visual History Archive. And that's something, and if we talk about partnerships and partnerships with Mickey Shapiro and with others that help to drive our scholarship, and it's a very provocative piece of work. I look forward to getting further into and learning more about this work on a personal level as well as a professional level. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about and reflect on the anti-racist pedagogy and linking the past to the present through the Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia and the work of Anne Breitenwischer and others in terms of this work, and David Pilgrim certainly leading this throughout. I also want to recognize the work by David Bright, Associate Professor, College of Pharmacy on precision pharmacotherapy. I tried that all last night and I just couldn't get it right, David. It's nothing personal. Integrating pharmacogenomics into clinical practice. And we've had several conversations about David's work and the cutting edge nature of this work. Also, evaluation of American Sign Language, co-curricular training for pharmacy students, co-authors Nicole Bailey, Patricia Carto, and Minji Sohn. And continuing with Karen Carter's work, and Karen is a professor at Kendall College of Art and Design at Ferris State University in art history, and her work on confronting racial stereotypes in graphic design history. And Daniel Ding, professor of languages and literature on the historical roots of technical communication in the Chinese traditions. And continuing another provocative presentation by Dr. Thomas Dowling this morning that preceded Denise Graves' presentation, and Tom's work in defining the role of pharmacists in the evolving treatment landscape for anemia in kidney disease. And continuing through, my friend Dr. Lisa Eschbach, who is a professor in the management department, with her co-author Nancy Levenberg on the Kuana, and I am sure I butchered that, Lisa, so my apologies. When I see you later on the other work that you're doing, the Kuana Mountain Lodge, an opportunity worth pursuing. And also the work that, not surprising, on Lean Higher Education Global Festival 2020, developing and assessing student team Lean experiential projects with co-authors Kaylee Burke and Tyler Glenn, Dr. Hagenauer as well as a co-author of that work, and Courtney Slater as well. And on a personal note, with Dr. Eschbach together with Dr. Alex Manga, they are leading our efforts with vaccination, using on campus, using lean management, logistics, and process management techniques to help deliver the vaccinations in our partnership with District 10 Health. So thank you, Lisa. A big shout out to you and Alex for all the work that you're doing. And Deidre Fagan, another new friend of mine on campus, who I had the opportunity to meet recently, Associate Professor of Languages and Literature, for her work. Her works Have Love, as a collection of poetry beginning and ending with love. Look forward to reading that collection for sure. And Notre Amour, comme una pomme vivante, la terre, our love like an apple comes from the earth. Another work that has received acclaim. And thank you, Dr. Fagan. And from the Kendall College of Art and Design at Ferris State University, Associate Professor Laurie Faulkner, who is in Fashion Studies, Storytelling Beyond Words, Kendall College of Art and Design, Fashion Studies, and Circle Theater. And Heather Duran, professor at College of Pharmacy, another pharmacy professor, who did research on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and psychotropic polypharmacy prescribing trends with her co-authors, Jamon Lutowiak and once again, Minji Son. Sarah Hinckley in the Michigan College of Optometry, professor on optometric referral rates for low vision rehabilitation services. I may have to come there afterwards just for a little treatment, but I've said that since my interview here. So just so you know that. And Henry Y. Leong Ho, associate professor in the marketing department, who did research on, are we making a difference? Rural university students' perceptions of diversity and inclusion, with his co-author, Catherine Browers. Nancy Hogan, another new friend of mine from criminal justice. Good to see you, Nancy. Professor in criminal justice, who wrote on a gendered career stage model to explore turnover intent among correctional officers. And we touched upon this a little bit in our conversation. Co-authors Marie Griffin, Eric Lambert, and Natalie Todak. And my friend Franklin Hughes, who does so much at the university for his work in video, graphic, and media specialization, who works with Vice President Pilgrim in the Division of Diversity, Inclusion, and Strategic Initiatives, who co-authored together with Vice President Pilgrim the seminal work, Haste to Rise, a remarkable experience of Black education during Jim Crow. This is a special piece of work, as all of the work is special that we're talking about today. This is a special piece of work which connects Ferris historically to its roots. And we really have benefited from this in terms of educating the university and its history and its strong culture of diversity and inclusion. And another new friend of mine, Steve Hundersmark, whom I met yesterday. And Steve's an associate professor in criminal justice who researched thinking and co-authored Thinking Through Video with his co-author Michael Vasicek. And Associate Professor Allison Genero, Michigan College of Optometry, vision therapy, who wrote on research and wrote on vision therapy, structure, and ocular motor skills. I'm going to have to visit her too. And Taylor Jones, pharmacy student, College of Pharmacy, who researched dissolution of antidepressant medications in a vertical sleeve gastrectomy. I know I get that wrong. Dissolution simulation. Co-authors Kim Hancock and Minji Son. And Jennifer Lamberts, Associate Professor, College of Pharmacy, Pharmaceutical Sciences, who researched and wrote together with Sky Pike on purine molecules in Parkinson's disease, analytical techniques, and clinical implications. Cheo Wu Lee, Professor of Accountancy, Finance, and Information Systems, co-authors Jin Jian and Junyon Raiko, who wrote on sustainability of analyst recommendations in multiple lead underwriter IPOs. And also with co-authors Jin Jun and Chan Kinyo Park, researched and wrote on centrality and corporate governance, decision of Korean Chabalos, social network approach. as well as with the same co-authors on multiple credit rating, triple rating under the requirement of dual rating in Korea. We also have from the College of Pharmacy, Associate Professor Eric Nybo, and who researched and wrote together with Michael Klepcher and Stephanie Klepcher, design of a disaster preparedness escape room for first and second year pharmacy students. They also wrote together, Dr. Nybo also wrote together with Dr. Katie Axford, as well as Michelle Saar and Mark Young on design of a large-scale escape room for first-year pharmacy student orientation. And Dr. Nybo also researched and co-authored together with Caitlin Brown and Miko Kettles and Benjamin Nijiwan on pathway engineering of anthracyclines, blazing trails to natural product glycodiversification. And my friend Glenn Okanowski, professor in the School of Digital Media, who wrote on Hallelujah for Hope. And my good friend, Vice President David Pilgrim, Vice President of Diversity Inclusion Strategic Initiatives, who co-authored together with Franklin Hughes, Haste to Rise, a remarkable experience of Black education during Jim Crow. And I encourage you to read all of these works as your interests take you. And I encourage you to read Haste to Rise as a member of the Ferris State University community. Professor in Michigan College of Pharmacy, Dr. Avesh Raghunandan, who wrote about fundamentals of binocular vision. Dr. Dija Rubel, Associate Professor, Collections and Access Services, who wrote an article on No Need to Ask, Creating Permissionless Blockchains of Metadata Records. Dr. Sarah Searfoss, pharmacy, well, not Dr. Sarah Searfoss, but to be Dr. Sarah Searfoss, pharmacy student, College of Pharmacy, who wrote on novel peroximal proliferated activated receptor agonist as a promising treatment for Alzheimer's disease. And I wish I could pronounce that better. And Brenda Sipe, former director of continuing studies, Kendall College of Art and Design, now director of continuing education at Northern Arizona University. I got a good climate change in that one, who wrote about embedding design thinking in a culture of innovation at 2 community colleges, as well as engaging faculty and students with design thinking. And again, Dr. Minji Song, Associate Professor, College of Pharmacy, who also does a lot of work in creating dashboards that help us to identify COVID outbreaks and provide regular updates to the campus community. Thank you, Dr. Song, Associate Professor, College of Pharmacy, who researched assessment of antibiotic use and concordance with practice guidelines within 3 diverse ambulatory clinic systems. And Dr. Song also, together with co-authors Chris Delcher, Patricia Friedman, and Jeffrey Talbert, wrote about the association between state Medicaid expansion status and naloxone prescription dispensing. She also, together with Patricia Freeman and Dr. Huang and Jeffrey Talbert, wrote about association of naloxone co-prescription laws with naloxone prescription dispensing in the United States. Dr. Garrett Stack, Assistant Professor, English Literature and World Languages on Yeoman's work, and Dr. Callie Van Langen, Professor, College of Pharmacy, Department of Pharmacy Practice, who researched on faculty perceptions of entrustable professional activities to determine pharmacy student readiness for advanced practice experiences. And also wrote together with Dr. Katie Axford, Dr. Lisa Dumkow, and Dr. Andrew Jameson an evaluation of multifaceted approach to antimicrobial stewardship education methods for medical release. And also wrote together with Dr. Dumkow, Dr. Alina, and Dr. Wolf on evaluation treatment of asymptomatic bacteria in psychiatric patients discharged from the emergency department. And also together with Dr. Bright, Dr. Lisa Meany, and Associate Provost Mandy Seiferlein wrote about an initial environment scan of APPE readiness assessment. And Dr. Vizina Rubal, Associate Professor of Social Work, together with co-authors Ann Adcock and Dr. Michelle Grikas, wrote about Better Late Than Never, comparing late work policies and their impact. And Maggie Walcott, our friend from the President's Office, the Administrative Assistant, the Office of the President, who wrote several poems here that include Hammer and Nail, I Carry, and An Open Vessel. And I've had the good pleasure of Maggie having shared those with us, and they're very compelling. Mark Wilson, my friend who couldn't get Dr. Pilgrim and my score down in the tournament last fall. And he's the PGA Golf Player Development Director for the College of Business, wrote on rules changes on display at major championships. Student research, Abby Wood, student College of Arts and Sciences, who produced photography under the title of Spring, photography that featured a single blue butterfly surrounded by tropical plants with a beam of sunshine illuminating the butterfly. And while this was long and took time, I think it's very important that we recognize everybody's work. And I'm very, very proud to be a member of the Ferris State University community that produces such fine work. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to share remarks.
Thank you, Bobby. Next, I would like to welcome KCAD President Tara McCracken to our virtual stage. Tara?
Thank you. And thank you for including me and allowing me to participate in the celebration of scholarly and creative work. Innovation is key to our success, and seeking opportunity to explore, expand, and share your time and talents is an asset to the university and to our community. I want to recognize and congratulate each one of you. KCAD has been a part of this event since the beginning. One of the traditions of this event is that a gift is designed and crafted at KCAD to recognize your accomplishments. So it's my pleasure to introduce Sophia Thomas, the Dow Center Flex Lab Coordinator and KCAD Adjunct Faculty Member, to share with us her inspiration and process for this year's gift.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here also. It's really exciting to hear all the stuff happening up north and on campus. So when Elisa Vaughn first approached me about the CSCW gift this year, we had a conversation about moving it beyond a commemorative object into something that's both commemorative, but also serves a utilitarian function. So thinking about that, and I kept coming back to this common thread of research that informs all of the work we do here on campus as creatives, but also in what people might consider more traditionally scholarship. I kept coming back to these images of library due date cards and the sort of scattershot array of information that appears on these. So I used some tools out of my own practice with parametric design and created a series of arrays that, when screen printed together, each one creates a unique cover for the books. So everything is individual, but continues to work in a system like we do here at the college. So thank you for letting me share a little bit about the notebooks, and that it's exciting to be here.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Sophia. I'm looking forward to seeing them. To round out our opening speakers, I would like to, or I am pleased to introduce Vice President David Pilgrim to share his thoughts on the topic of scholarship.
So in case you think I'm reading, it's because I'm reading. And this will be fairly short, so bear with me. Congratulations to all of you whose ideas and work we highlight today. We celebrate your accomplishments. I will address my brief comments to all the writers in the audience. Some writers are blessed to enjoy the process of writing. They have set aside times to write. Their desks and notes are organized. They sit down with a small glass of sherry or brandy, and they casually, even joyfully, put their words on paper. But there are others, myself included, who have always struggled to write. Like some of you, I find writing a lonely, tiring venture, a wrestling match between the part of me that is driven to write and the part that would rather be golfing, conversing with a friend, watching a Netflix original series, or quite frankly, doing anything but writing. I'm not exaggerating when I say that for me, the best part of the writing process is being done. Sitting and holding a document that has been written, edited, footnotes validated, a manuscript that has everything in it that needed to be said. Congratulations to my colleague and co-author, Franklin Hughes. Because of him, the Ferris community now knows an important part of our past. To use a sports metaphor, he ran the first lap before I joined the race. Once I caught up, we ran in tandem. Hughes reminds me of Joel Augustus Rogers, the author, journalist, and historian who contributed much to our understanding of African Americans in the United States. Like Rogers, Hughes is a dogged researcher. Together, we painstakingly search journals, magazines, newspapers, online sites, using any and every tool to find clues to forgotten stories, but stories no longer lost, stories that should no longer be absent from our lectures or invisible in the murals we paint. I am proud of Haste to Rise, the book that we wrote. Between 1910 and the mid-1920s, more than 60 Black students from the South bravely traveled to Ferris Institute. They came to enroll in college programs and college preparatory courses and to escape, if only temporarily, the daily and ubiquitous indignities suffered under the Jim Crow racial hierarchy. They excelled in their studies and became accomplished in their professional fields. Many went on to both ignite and help lead the explosive civil rights movement. I am proud to teach at a university that helped produce Belford Lawson, the lead attorney in New Negro Alliance versus Sanitary Grocery Company, 1938, a landmark court battle that safeguarded the right to picket. I should also mention one of Lawson's contemporaries, Percival L. Prattis, a pioneering journalist and influential newspaper executive. In 1947, he became the first African-American news correspondent admitted to the U.S. House and Senate press galleries. These are two of the students profiled in the book. Haste to Rise also allowed us to share insight into the life and work of our institute's founder, Woodbridge Nathan Ferris, a racial justice pioneer. I will end this message by repeating some advice that I received years ago when I was beginning my journey as a writer. First, read. When I say this, I am reminded of the quote from William Faulkner. Read, 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 read everything, trash, classics, good and bad, and see how they do it. Just like a carpenter who works as an apprentice and studies the master. Read, you'll absorb it, then write. If it's good, you'll find out. If it's not, throw it out the window. Second, and with apologies to Nike, just do it. One of my graduate teachers encouraged us to work on our dissertation every day. He said something similar to this. Every day, add words, even if it's only a sentence that must be edited later. The time will go by, so let no day pass without you adding words. I don't remember his name, but I remember the advice. Even when it's hard, write. Write until you are empty, until you have nothing else to say. Finally, sometimes you must be the one who breaks the ground. Toni Morrison said, if there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. That is what Franklin and I sought to do. Again, congratulations to all of you whose ideas and work we honor today.
Great. Thank you, David. It's now time for me to turn the podium over, as it were, to Alicia for our lightning talks. Take it away.
Okay, I see you have a slideshow up. Fabulous. So I have a trusty timer, my stopwatch, and my desk bell. And you will get 3 minutes, and then I will ring the bell. So if you want to go ahead and advance the first slide, I believe our first speaker is Dr. Deidre Fagan.
Thank you and good afternoon. I want to give a nod to David. I was just reiterating to my advanced creative writing students today that writers read in every genre, not just the genre they wish to write in. I'm going to be reading a poem from the Have Love collection. The collection is very much about love, loss, going on, even when reluctantly, and new love. The poem I'm reading is near the end of the collection and was a Best of the Net finalist in poetry in 2018. The title of the poem is Outside In. Sometimes I look inside my house and wonder who lives there. Paintings on the walls, books lining the shelves, a dimly lit chandelier hovering above a single lit candle on the dining room table. Once I pulled into the drive and there was a boy leaning forward to light the candle, a girl setting the table, a man at the sink, a painting exhibiting chiaroscuro. No one else peering in would know this father had just entered the scene, that the girl has nightmares, that the boy has nestled and locked a hidden place that recalls his father's deathbed breaths. What brushstrokes captured the scene best, or at all? And what would be revealed should the frame change? Should some of the paint be scraped away to reveal the original strokes? And more simply, how the mother, about to arrive down center, would present. That evening, observing the peaceful scene, the cold outside holding me in place, the warmth inside beckoning, the dog nudged me, just as I was entering the stage of hopeful dreaming. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so fast. We still had a minute left. Our next celebrant is Glenn Okonowski. I tried to get, oh, sorry. I have a list here. I guess he's not on the list. Okay, so our next speaker is actually Dr. David Bright.
So good evening, thank you. This project is being described here is really a story of collaboration and of students teaching professors, and it was so much fun. So this project originated when I was teaching a clinical communications course, and Nicole Bailey, a P1 student at the time, came and sat down in my office and said, "So when are we going to learn how to communicate better with deaf and hard of hearing patients?" And it struck me, because at that point in our program, I didn't think that we necessarily did that or spent much time on that. And so I asked Nicole, would you help me do something about that? And it turned into Nicole off to the races, generating a co-curricular program on American Sign Language instruction that supported teaching on deaf and hard of hearing culture, and so much good work for now 2 iterations of that course for pharmacy students, and later also adding in optometry students. So the project was done in such a way that we did a pre-post analysis and demonstrated outcomes from that. So many thanks to Minji Sohn and helping with the research framework on that. And huge congratulations to Nicole Bailey, Petty Carito, and Jessica Berkey as the 3 student authors that were the first, second, and third author very deservingly on this paper.
Thank you, David. Next is Dr. Stacy Armstrong.
Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about my research here. So I just want to tell you a bit about this article, which is called Adolescent Coping, In-Person versus Cyber Victimization, which was a passion of mine, still is a passion of mine when I was in graduate school, but was recently published. And this idea was really born out of this idea, or the study was born out of the idea that our cyber victimization programs that are administered in schools are largely based off of these in-person victimization programs that we don't even know if they work. So do coping strategies in one situation work for the other? And so when I set out with this research project, I essentially wanted to compare the use of coping strategies in both situations and determine if the coping strategies were effective. And so I had this great opportunity to work with a junior high school in the area and recruited participants who were in 7th and 8th grade, and largely found that adolescents use a lot more strategies to cope with in-person victimization than cyber victimization. Some other good news about this was that positive coping skills like using social support, positive distraction strategies, were used quite often. They were used more than maybe not so helpful coping strategies like distancing and retaliation. For both in-person and cyber victimization, problem solving was perceived to be effective, also great news. And in addition to that, the students felt that in both types of situations, retaliation was perceived not to be so effective. So all of this was stuff we were hoping to see. One thing that really stood out to us was that for cyber victimization, the use of social support by friends, family members, and adults was perceived to be effective. However, adolescents were saying in cyber victimization situations, they really weren't using it. So what do we take from all this? Where do we go? Our hope is that we can use this information and this data to help to inform intervention programs that we're giving to students in schools and really help them to navigate effective online healthy coping strategies so that they can develop a healthy relationship with the internet and be successful in their coping, even when things get difficult. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. Settings like this are wonderful.
Thank you, Stacy. Next is Dr. Daniel Ding. You're muted.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for your invitation and including me in this function. I'm Daniel Ding, and I've been teaching technical writing, business writing, and advanced composition ever since 1998. So it's 23 years. Okay. Before I talk about my book, that's my book, Let me read a couple of lines from Homer's Odyssey. Sing to me of the man Muse, the man of twists and turns, driven time and again off course, once he had plundered the hallowed heights of Troy. The first two lines from Homer's Odyssey. Here, the Homer is talking about Muse. Actually, he is asking for inspiration. Okay? So today, I'll talk about inspirations for my book, The Muse. Okay? Where did I get ideas? Okay? I remember in his speech, David just now was talking about writing with a cup of brandy and wine, or for some authors, writing is a lonely activity. Well, physically, you could write alone. You just sit there behind a closed door. But philosophically, writing is always, for me, is always a collaboration between you, the author, and the authors of the articles and the sources you reference, even between you and your audience, because your audience provide feedback. So let me begin to talk about the Muse inspirations for my book. Years ago, back in 2004, 2005, 2006, I published some articles that traced Chinese technical writing to ancient China back in the Stone Age. And after I published these articles, I received lots of suggestions from my audience and readers. They suggest that I write a book that comprehensively explore the roots of technical writing in the Chinese tradition. Well, at that time, I was thinking about it, but I didn't start the work because for me at that time, it was too ambitious. It's a book. Okay. And then in 2008, on my sabbatical leave, I taught a couple of classes at a Chinese university, classes of technical communication, technical writing. And while there, the dean of the College of Foreign Languages was discussing history of technical writing in Chinese colleges. So from there, we also discussed the history of Chinese technical writing. So we talked about the roots of technical writing in the Chinese tradition. He told me he had read my articles, and he also suggested that I write a book. And graciously, he also provided a list of Chinese classical works that I could reference. Okay? And from there, I seriously thought about it. Okay? So back home, I started reading those Chinese classics, about 25 of them. Okay? And also, I started reading articles on those Chinese classics. It took me 5 years to read those books and articles. Okay? And then in 2000, I think it's 2015, I started to collect the information for my own book. Okay? And it took me a year to do this. Okay? I found about 2,000 sources. Okay? And I read all of them, and eventually I used 500 of them. Okay? Meantime, my audience and readers, and including this Chinese colleague, okay, continued to provide suggestions and ideas to me on this book. Okay? So in that sense, this book is a collaboration or cooperation between me and my audience and the readers, and also this Chinese colleague. Okay, it took me 3 years to finish this book. So in other words, it took me longer to collect the information than writing this book. Okay, I guess that's always true for almost all the writers. Okay? You spend a lot of time, collecting information. You read, as David said in his speech, you just read. You read this, read that. You keep useful information. You leave out useless information, and so you spend lots of time reading and collecting information, okay? Much longer than actually reading time. Okay, that's about it. Okay, the muse, for my book, my audience and the readers. I really appreciate their cooperation.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Here is a colleague from Flight, a fellow librarian, Deja Rubel.
Back before I had pandemic hair, my best photo until I have my wedding in September, but I just wanted to start and actually thank Dr. Goglin, and as well as a fellow student in the Masters in Information Security and Intelligence program, Amber Snow, because Amber Snow did some of the technical heavy lifting as part of this project during her capstone. And then I got to sort of keep pushing it into a more theoretical place, which is good for me because, yeah, not so strong at coding. So without going into a lot of detail, this is an attempt to sort of take cross-pollination from information security and sort of bring it into the information science field. And so as many of you people have looked at what was traditionally called a catalog, we have, little records that describe books and other information objects, for lack of a better way of putting it. And my idea was we have people that change those records a lot, but they really don't get the changes tracked or any idea as to why people make the changes on the centralized authority. So I was like, well, it'd be nice to be able to track that. And in addition to that, it would be even more awesome if we could find a way that would allow people that aren't necessarily cultural heritage institutions to be able to contribute for things like the Occupy Wall Street movement, Black Lives Matter, as well as other constituencies. The problem is librarians and other cultural heritage institutions want to be able to rely on authoritative information though. So this blockchain was actually designed using something called quorums and quorum slices, so that libraries and other places could specify, for example, if the Library of Congress has this, and excuse me, dog walks in, and the, like say the Library of Medicine, agrees with this record, and, some other people that we all agree are authoritative, then, we would also agree with this part of the blockchain. So it would balance that ability to have, anonymous or semi-anonymous contributors while still having the ability to have some sort of authoritative control. And it also would allow for decentralized storage of the whole blockchain, because right now, at least in the library world, a lot of our metadata databases are built by us happy little librarians in the back room, but they're being sold back to us, as databases by vendors, even though we're kind of the ones creating the content. And granted, they do have other features for those databases, but I still dream of a decentralized, library environment. So thank you for listening to me. And once again, we have a great master's program in information security and intelligence, and it's just growing. We got some AI, so.
Thank you, Deja. And next, Dr. Michael Berghoff.
Hello, everyone. As some of you know, Ferris is host to the USC Shoah Foundation Archive of Genocides, nearly 55,000 testimonies of the survivors of the Holocaust and 8 other genocides. And Ferris is one of fewer than 100 institutions worldwide that has full access to this, and only one of 3 Michigan universities, with State and U of M being the other 2. This access was gifted by Ferris alum Mickey Shapiro back in 2017, and the foundation was founded by Steven Spielberg actually in 1994 after his film Schindler's List. We presented to the Latinx Social Work Organization Conference at UC Berkeley Latinx Center on using the archive in the social work classroom and in community organizing, connecting the dots of past genocides to contextualize and hopefully prevent future genocides. We presented during the US-Mexico border conflict when comparisons were being made with family separation and children in cages to Nazi concentration camps. And that prompted a response during the last administration from the federally funded US Holocaust Museum instructing the public not to consider the relationship between the Holocaust and other historical events, nor at any present situation, which made many of us wonder, what is the point of the slogan, never again? Leaving us suspecting that this was merely providing cover for oppressive policies. Because connecting the dots is exactly what we do in genocide studies. Social work students are taught developmental thinking, going beyond what is happening now, looking at antecedents, historical context, patterns, likely outcomes. In the 8-stage model of genocidal processes, mass killing that most people understandably equate with genocide is stage 7. Prior to stage 7 are classification, symbolization, dehumanization, organization, polarization, and preparation separation, all prior to stage 7, extermination, and stage 8, denial. I had the amazingly good fortune to have my close friend and Ferris ASL partner from El Salvador, Cruz Morales, co-present with me. As fate would have it, she was living in the Bay Area, having recently been granted asylum in the US due to the violence in her community. She is an environmentalist, a community organizer, human rights advocate, all-around force of nature, and part of a group of young adults devoted to preserving historic memory. And for her community, that means the brutal war of the 80s and the scorched earth destruction of her tiny village of Santa Marta in northern El Salvador. So she described the massacre, her community's flight from the military, the refugee camps in Honduras, and the return to rebuild prior to the war's conclusion, and also life and the aftermath in her community today, and the importance of keeping that historic memory alive, especially among the youth. But we could not have anticipated the response of the attendees. Many were originally from Central America and had never heard anyone acknowledge the Latin American experience in the context of the genocides and mass atrocities that were committed in their home countries. They learned about the Holocaust and maybe heard of the Armenian genocide, but never anything about Latin America. Many tearfully thanked us for being heard and seen in that presentation, mostly for Cruz's moving testimony, delivered mostly in Spanish, and encouraged us to continue this important work and to come back to present again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Berghoff. Next is another colleague of mine at KCAD, Lori Faulkner. I'm sure she's here. I saw her earlier. Lori, are you there?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Elise.
You're welcome.
Storytelling Beyond Words was a presentation I did in collaboration with Circle Theater to explore how seemingly disparate art forms share commonalities. Wordless storytelling was offered in coordination with an exhibition at the Grand Rapids Art Museum, showcasing pieces from award-winning author and illustrator David Weisner in the art of wordless storytelling. The exhibition featured over 70 original watercolors from his books, including Caldecott Medal winners Tuesday, The Three Pigs, and Flotsam. His picture books often take years to complete and develop from a process of sketching, drawing, creating 3D models, and then painting the richly layered watercolors that fill the books. By removing the text from the book, he is removing the author's voice, which lets each reader tell the story in their own voice. It puts readers in the position of collaborating in the storytelling process, asking them to use their imagination along with his. In fashion, designers also use the power of visual images to ignite the imagination and evoke emotions without words. Our students use this process each time they create. Each creation is an expression of something they are thinking, feeling, or feel a desire to express. Students use the same creative process used by world-renowned fashion designers such as Iris van Herpen, who was used as an example for this presentation. Iris Van Herpen made her debut in Paris as a member of the Chambre Syndicale de la Haute Couture with Capriole. Besides showing a compilation of highlights from previous collections, this new collection also presented 5 striking outfits that evoke the feeling just before and during a free fall parachute jump. To reset body and mind, Van Herpen once in a while takes a leap in the air, the meaning of the French word cabriole. This collection is a reflection of the existential extremes between body and mind experienced during a parachute jump. For instance, the snake dress is created from sinuous shapes made of acrylic sheets that wrap around the wearer, evoking the mental state at the moment before the jump, when, as Van Herpen explains, all my energy is in my mind and I feel as though my head is snaking through thousands of bends. At first sight, the dress looks like a modern variant of the Laocoon, the ancient Greek sculpture that depicts a Trojan priest and his 2 sons in the grip of 2 sea serpents, but it is probably closer to an evocation of the mental state at the moment before the jump. Other garments like the skeleton dress were not the product of industrious handwork, but came straight from the computer and the 3D printer. This white polyamide dress evokes the moment of the free fall when every fiber of the body feels as though it is growing in all directions and brings to mind a hybrid skeleton as if the body is turned inside out. The materials used in her designs were polyamide, transparent and black acrylic sheets, and fabric. Iris collaborates with other 3D designers to make her creations. The storytelling process is important for apparel designers and many other majors and is one of those commonalities found throughout many disciplines in our university. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And next, somebody who's in an important office, Maggie Walcott.
Thank you. Presenting today is kind of thrilling, actually, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because as far as I can tell, I am the only staff member on this lofty roster of Lightning Talk individuals who's not also a faculty member. So there's a little pressure there. And secondly, because I likely wouldn't be presenting today if it weren't for kind of a serendipitous set of meetings between my friend Deirdre, who presented earlier, who suggested I take a creative writing course, preferably hers, and a routine annual review that my boss had with me, who suggested I consider also a creative writing class for professional development. And if someone had told me 4 years ago before I came to Ferris that I would now be a published writer, I probably would have laughed in their face, but here we are. And these opportunities were made possible because of Ferris, and I'm really grateful to be able to present this to you today. So the piece that I'm going to read is one of my poems that was published last summer in the Dunes Review. And while my teacher would remind you never to assume that a poem is based on real events, this one is, and it's called I Carry. I carry. You lean across the table to explain with small hands, fine bone instruments of illumination, that you spent one interminably hot summer learning a trowel's sharp lines and the pleasing sound metal makes when scraping mortar across brick. How you spent the next 7 summers learning that tool belts are the portable version of a car's back seat after a week-long vacation at the beach, filled with bits of chaff that scratch at your hand, one nail to hold things together, always out of your grasp. How you spent long nights in shattered sleep, too tired to watch that primetime show that made you snort in laughter while unconscious arms twitched reflexively, hammering fantasy nails 10 feet high, a harmless strike against cotton and feather. How you spent 2 weeks on your knees with the heavy weight of a very pregnant belly, making you rethink your life choices, or at least the slate tile pressed by hand into grout, for calling your husband to help you stand. Quiet collusion of fetus and gravity, too much to bear on your own. How you will spend the remaining decades of life explaining to those who can't know that your diminutive body is stronger, infinitely tougher than they think, as they offer to carry that box or that bag or your load. You can tell from the way their eyes faintly widen, lips parting slightly, a small mew of wonder, at this and that you are not what they expected, that your delicate heft has surprised their hands with its weight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Okay, Glenn Ankonowski. Did I get it right?
Very close, Elisa, and thank you. I
emailed you to get your phonetic spelling.
I saw that, and I'm sorry I was in class, but you did great. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to present tonight about one of the impacts of this circumstance of quarantine, and that is the change that that's had on live performances. And of course, all of these music organizations have sought ways to still reach their audiences, and the Grand Rapids Symphony is no exception. So back in March on a Saturday, in fact, I got an email that led to a conversation within an hour that led to this project that they called the Hallelujah for Hope. And their intent was obviously to deliver a performance. Since they couldn't do it in the orchestra hall, they wanted to do this virtual performance. And I'm sure you've seen virtual performances. They've become somewhat popular over the last year. And they take a fair amount of special approaches, I would say. So the Hallelujah course in particular was started with the intent that we'd have 50 participants. And that's what we planned for. They sent out the invite to both orchestra members and then their adult chorus, and we ended up with 74 participants. The challenge to that is everyone who's participating comes in as a separate track, and editing software that I'm working with maxes out at 24 tracks. So I think if we go to the next slide, I think there's some examples here. So what you see here is kind of like the final edit. This isn't the Hallelujah chorus, this is another piece that I did, but you can see here nine images, 9 squares that are actually individual compositions that are built and then edited to this. So if we go to the next slide, here we see kind of what that looks like. So one square are these vocalists, and you can see the number of video tracks there, 14 tracks. These performances start with a guide track that goes out. Everyone has to perform to the track. So you see everyone wearing headphones. That's how they know what they're performing along to. Ideally, and these are all musicians, they need to hit a sync point, and that's what this young lady is doing here. She's clapping to give us a sync point. She's supposed to do that in harmony with the guide track. You'd be amazed how many professional musicians didn't understand that they needed to actually do that, which meant we had to struggle a little bit to get the audio synced up. But from there, you kind of build all this up. It takes a lot of rendering because there's an effect on everything to fix the visual. And then if we go back to the previous track, each of those elements then are mixed down. And so kind of where you see that blue line on the timeline, that's the point in time that we're looking at. And you can see at that point in time, we have roughly 10 video tracks that are all those elements that were kind of built separately. So a fun thing is sometimes we're seeing these frames individually, sometimes we're seeing them collectively and grouped. Separate process to this is the audio mixing. Every track, the audio track is mixed off, is taken off individually and sent to an audio engineer who does the audio mixing. So the result is we have people who've submitted recordings they've made on their iPhone or whatever device they have. They've sent these tracks in. The audio is mixed in such a way that I would argue people have had a hard time knowing that it was not recorded in a more traditional form. And then we do what we can with the images to put them together. Ironically, although I worked professionally for 12 years before I started teaching at Ferris, and although I've done professional work since I've been at Ferris, this video, which was released on YouTube and on Facebook the Friday before Easter, this video has a cumulative almost 600,000 views. It was played as part of Inside Edition's Playout on Friday night. And so somehow in the midst of this, I produced content that's the most prolific content I ever produced as a video producer. So go figure. It took a pandemic, but here I am. So anyhow, it was a fun experience. It led to several more of these performances. Each one has been unique. The one that we're looking at is sample of here is a children's choir performing "Oh Holy Night" as part of the holiday concert. So I will share a link to the YouTube file for the Hallelujah Chorus in the comment section if you'd like to view it. And again, thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Glenn. And next is Dr. Nancy Hogan.
Hi. My article was kind of interesting in the fact that when I started my doctorate back in the early 90s, my chair suggested I write about career stage theory. So I researched what it was, and then he gave me a database from a prison out in Arizona, but it didn't work because the prison had only been 5 years, and career stage theory needs to have people in each stage, and the last stage is 10 years and plus. So when we decided to write on this, it was very interesting that we brought Marie Griffin on, who was my chair's wife, but also she was in the cohort below me. And she is first author on this in honor of her legacy, not only in criminal justice, she died in 2016 of breast cancer. But it really is the completion of something that I started back, my first research project as a doctoral student. And gendered, that we took two approaches on this, one to look at gender to see if there was any differences, but to look at career stages, and it doesn't matter what field you're in, the career stages, which were really developed by Super in 1957. The first one was the entry stage, which is your first year to see if you fit into the job that you have selected and see if you have the skills to do it. And then we have the second stage, which is usually 1 to 4 years, which is really referred to as the early career stage. First one was the entry stage. And this is usually where you're seeing if you have the skills to move on, as well as how things are going, or do you aspire for bigger and better things in your life. Mid-career is those 5 to 9 years. And this is usually where people are now settling down into the career. If they're still at the same organization, that means that they like it. And they're usually working on making themselves a very big contributor to the organization. And then we come to what is called the maintenance stage, which is 10 years and above, where really your focus, depending on where you are in those 10 years, is ultimately to maintain what level you were at until right before you start thinking about retirement. And then you might kind of drift off. So we took these career stages, and then we wanted to look at turnover intent, which is really, do people want to leave? And when do they want to leave? And because it costs so much in the correctional field, just as well as it does in policing to train people, you're talking $10,000 to $15,000 that you're going to invest up front into somebody. And so it's really important to know why they want to leave. And the second thing that we added to this is that the research shows that there are definite differences between how males and females see the workplace and what is important to them. So our dependent variable was turnover intent, but we also looked at a lot of workplace factors to see how they affected men and women. And the survey was done to 5,500 plus correctional officers from Southwest Arizona, Southwest United States, actually Arizona, and using a combination of t-tests and correlations, but ultimately OLS regression. Our results showed that males, which is really kind of interesting, males in all career stages had more turnover intent ideas than women did. And we surmise that, unfortunately, for many women, even today, that opportunities to advance may be limited, but also one of the attractions of corrections as well as policing, particularly here in Michigan, is that these are unionized jobs. So pay and benefits equal what men make. And I've always wondered in my life, because I've always been in a union, how that pay differential and those benefit differentials would have been if I had not been in a union.
Time's up, Dr. Hogan.
Yes.
Time is up.
Okay.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Garrett Stack.
Hi, everybody. Poetry is having a real moment here in 2021, huh? We've got a lot of that to thank our youth poet laureate, Amanda Gorman, who made the genre so popular when they let her read at the inauguration and then again at the Super Bowl. I read a joke that for the first time ever, professional football players were allowed to perform during a poetry reading, which I appreciated. Even here today, we have not one, but 3 poets invited to share their work. Deirdre and Maggie write wonderful poems, don't they? In light of the fact that you've already heard some poetry and that I'm batting cleanup, I want to take a quick minute to use some of my time to talk about empathy. Writing is an inherently empathetic process. Empathy is a result of mindfulness, and in order to write well, we must be mindful of our readers. For research, this means clarity and consistent citation, but it also entails imagining your readers and writing on their behalf. You write for them, not for yourself. The same goes for reading. As Dr. Pilgrim said, reading has value in and of itself. And in order to fully apprehend another writer's work, we must put ourselves into their inky palms, to give ourselves over to their worldview and do our best to understand their perspective, even if we inherently disagree. I began writing something new the other day, and the first line went, "A thing is not a thing it represents, except for poems about poetry." And then I immediately got stuck, as I'm sure you fantastic writers never do, until I started thinking about this talk and I realized what the second line should be. And empathy is reading. If you don't mind, I'm going to add one more poem to your plate today. It has nothing to do with the book that I published last year, which you can read. It's okay. But forgive me for any lack of polish because it's brand new. It's called This Is Not a Pipe. He said a thing is not the thing it represents, and he showed me as proof the reflection of a tree in leaf on the cool black surface of his phone. And I said true, except for poems about poetry and the empathy of comprehension. And he said I had briefly forgotten that I don't care what you think. How contemptible we become to our partners and friends must have something to do with the statistical incongruity between the likelihood of contentment versus disappointment, like a child who just unplugs the lamp instead of reaching all the way up for the switch. I think I'll let him lie with his phony tree and his regrets while I go and pluck peonies from my basket of rebuttals. First, the magnanimity of all mothers. Second, hunger and a single crow standing in a winter field. And last, always last, our love itself and the pounding of the endless sea. Thank you. Please keep reading.
Thank you, Garrett. And I think that concludes the lightning rounds. Thank you to all of our authors, creators, artists, designers for sharing with us today. And I believe I give it over to Megan. Or should we?
Yes, I also just want to thank everybody who did these lightning talks today. That was fantastic. We do have time for maybe one question. If somebody has a burning question that they want to ask one of the lightning talk participants, it'll be first come, first serve if there's somebody who has one.
Could we make some comments instead of asking questions?
Quickly, you can do that, absolutely.
How quickly, I mean? 1 minute?
Sure.
Well, I really appreciate, we have several poets today, including 2 from my departments. Deirdre and Garrett. So I really appreciate their reading their own poems. And that reminds me of Ezra Pound reading his own poems. Ezra Pound is my favorite poetry reader. And I would love to see Ezra Pound reading our poets' poems. I mean, it would be wonderful, you know. You could hear a strong rhythm when Ezra Pound is reading his poems. Oh, by the way, has anybody else ever heard Ezra Pound reading his own poems in our group, in the audience? No, well, let me try to mimic Ezra Pound reading a couple of lines. Many cities of men he saw and learned their minds. Many pains he suffered, heartsick on the open sea, fighting to save his life and bring his comrades home. But he couldn't save them from disaster, hard as he strove. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I will take just a few moments to close. Once again, I just want to thank everybody who attended, who was part of the Scholarship and Creative Works. We do have a website where all of them are listed, so you can get a brief description of their work and maybe at least have their name to reach out if you do have any questions or want more information. It is really, for me, very exciting and inspiring to see all of these works that are happening within Ferris. So once again, I want to thank everybody. Please do visit that website. I will make sure that I put it in the chat, and we look forward to seeing what comes up within the next year for next year's event. So keep, working on those scholarships and creative works. We'd love to see this continue to grow. And so with that, we just want to thank you for your time today. We know that in many ways it's been a very long day, but it's been a very exciting day. So with that, I will wrap up this event, and thank you again for attending.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.